Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining me today, everybody, for another whiskey review. Today, we are going to be getting into one of the latest releases from Dixon Deadman over at 2XO, which stands for Two Times Oak. This is in the Oak series. This is the American Oak Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. This is coming at us at 92 proof and is meant to be more of the entry level, consistent flavor profile among the 2XO series. So let's get into it a little bit, and we're going to talk about the context of this pour and ultimately break it down and get into the final scores. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. So let's pour a little bit of this for today's tasting. For today, I am going to be pouring this into a mash and drum Glen. Cheers, Jason. All right. So, as mentioned off the top, this is coming from 2XO, which is Dixon Deadman's newest brand after he left Kentucky Al just a few years ago. Now, the products in the 2XO series, I mean, the whole series is called Two Times Oak. So ultimately, these are going to be toasted or double oaked casks. And he's doing the blending and then he's toasting them or double oaking them essentially. And this one comes in at 92 proof. It ran me $48 in Northern Kentucky. And in one of the press releases, I swear I saw this. It's meant to be a way for 2XO to get more into bars. You know, the fact that it's going to be a cheaper bottle than the other releases, it's 92 proof. You know, that just makes it more accessible. Also, when I hear we want to get it into bars, that does make me think we wanted to get it into cocktails too. So that's something I'm interested in experimenting with later. Now, the other releases in the 2XO series, there have been 3 different batches thus, but those releases come in at 104 proof and have cost between 95 and $100 depending on your area and some fluctuation there. So once again, this is meant to be the more budget entry level, and the proof is reduced because of that as well. So let's get into the tasting notes. We're going to go into the nose, we're going to go into the palate, and then we'll give some final conclusions at the end. And then I've got a comparison to talk about as we do wrap this up that may put it into other contexts. So cheers, everybody. Thanks for joining me this far. Hmm. The nose is interesting. You know, you kind of approach this one at different angles, and it gives you different things. It never quite comes together with the cohesion, but it does give some nice flavors as you kind of explore it. You know, one thing that does stick out to me is almost a white chocolate smell. There's even like a waxiness to that white chocolate. And then as I try to get into it deeper, I almost wonder if it's like that Hershey's cookies and cream bar when I'm talking about the white chocolate, and it's got some of that chocolate in it too. So it kind of gives you the combination of both of those. Um, I get a lot of coconut flakes, dried coconut flakes as well. If I get into it a little deeper, we do get into some fruits, slight apple, slight cherry, and you know, those have been dusted in some cinnamon. But I would say what I'm equating to that white chocolate is probably the thing that sticks out the most to me. All right, let's get into the palate. Cheers, everybody. Hmm. Up front, the initial flavors that it gives, I really like. That's actually the peak of the experience, though, so we'll break down the other ones. But man, initially, you're getting just this combination of charred marshmallow, black pepper, cinnamon, and the mouthfeel is actually surprisingly oily, considering the 92 proof. Uh, if I were to compare this to baseline Elijah Craig or those type of more baseline bourbons, I don't think the mouthfeel on those is going to feel real watery compared to this one. So that's good. When it comes to mid palate, man, I really don't get a whole lot of flavor. Essentially, a combination of just a French vanilla and a char, but the flavors that I initially had, that charred marshmallow and the cinnamon and the spices and everything that kind of excited me up front, doesn't it just kind of disappears and dissipates. Now, towards the finish, we do get another flavor wave, but yeah, it really kind of craters a little bit mid palate. The charred marshmallow does return on the finish. Um, Faint cherry, essentially like a stewed cinnamon apple combination. So kind of the same things I've been hinting at since the nose and when I was talking about some of those initial flavors that I was getting. What's interesting too is towards the back end of the finish, there's even a little bit of like a new leather or tobacco going on as well, most likely due to the new cast that it was finished in. But that part brings some good flavor at least. But yeah, it's kind of that mid palate where it really craters out that kind of gets me. Let's see if I can get one more good taste out of this. No, I think that essentially describes everything there. A little drying too, but that can happen with the double oaked or toasted products. Let's get into the scores. So, here on the channel, we do have a three-tier scoring system, ultimately summarizing everything into a flavor score, an experience score, and a value score. But there are a whole bunch of metrics that go behind each of these. And as you can see, essentially gave it sevens across the board. Now, if you were to get more detailed into the other metrics, it's not all sevens. It's kind of kind of, as I said, craters mid palate, but then the front gave me a whole lot of flavor. So it's bouncing around a bit and ultimately just evening out at sevens across the board. So that does give it a total score of a 70 out of 100. I also gave it a 70 on the value. My thought process there was um, in general, it doesn't, there's a bunch of bottles, probably about $30, $35 that I might recommend over this. The one that I would compare it to, though, and I'll get to this into my conclusions, would be the Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel. But let me hold those thoughts until the end. So ultimately, I am classifying this as a good pour. Excited to do some cocktails with it too, just to see what the a toasted bourbon does bring to a cocktail. I've not really experimented with toasted or double oaked bourbons in a cocktail before, so this is going to be one that I will do that with. But when it comes to a recommend, then I don't know, it's not gonna cater to some people when it comes to who this is for. This is more of the consistent product, the entry level product of the 2XO. I'm not going to be recommending this to anyone who really likes the barrel proof or anything like that. I'm gonna use it more as a gateway for people to get into the flavors of a toasted cast, particularly that coconut I was picking up and things like that. Do I plan to buy another? Probably not. I think this will probably be a one and done for me, at least with the if the American Oak is the only release in this series. If they come out with another one, maybe I'll try, but I think for now, this is a one and done for me. So, in conclusion, I think one thing that I could compare it to, though, would be the Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel. I know that one was a bit divisive when it first came out, And I would take this over the Elijah Craig Toasted, which I think is around the same price at $49.99. I want to say is that if you get it for MSRP. So with that as the comparison, and if you are a fan of that release, or if you weren't a fan of that release, either way, I guess, just know that I would actually take this 2XO over that. And I think that is the most comparable thing I can think about on the market today when it comes to a double oaked, proof down, $50 Kentucky bourbon. So hopefully that helps sum it up for you if you were interested in this release. If you've had this before, let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really curious to hear what other people think about this release. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. I'll catch you on the next whiskey review. Goodbye, everybody.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again.